If you're thinking about or planning on starting your own business, you may be wondering or planning on forming an LLC for that new business. You may be wondering, do I need to form an LLC? Is it really going to be beneficial for me? Are there any drawbacks to forming an LLC? If that's you, you have come to the right place. In this video, I am going to talk about sole proprietorships versus LLCs, what each one means, what's the difference, the pros and cons of each, and a few things to consider if you're kind of still on the fence. Before we get into all of that though, hello, I'm attorney Aiden Durham with 180 Law Co. in Colorado, and this is All Up in Your Business. While I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer. The stuff I talk about in this video is not a substitute for actual legal advice. If you need help with any legal situation, you should consult with a lawyer. Let's kick things off with just some of the basics. What is a sole proprietorship? A sole proprietorship is the simplest form of business ownership. It is one person doing business. It's a pretty common go-to business structure for anyone that's working for themselves, freelancing, operating a small operation. The equivalent to a sole proprietorship when there's more than one person is a partnership. It's generally the same idea. Sole proprietorship is one person doing business. A partnership is two or more persons doing business. What are some of the pros, the benefits of operating as a sole proprietorship? The biggest one is it's easy to set up. You don't really need to do anything. You don't have to file any paperwork with the Secretary of State to form a sole proprietorship. You just kind of do it. This is a little caveat to that. You may still have to file a DBA or a trade name if you're not going to be operating the business under your legal name. If you're going to have some kind of a trade name, if you want to operate under some different name, then you'll likely, most states require that you register that DBA or that trade name with the state. But sole proprietorships don't really have much like ongoing obligation, compliance stuff, not much you have to worry about. You don't have to file annual reports or regular reports, anything like that. You still have to comply with whatever other regulations or laws might apply to a business in general, like maybe a business license or a business permit. But the actual setup and formation of a sole proprietorship is easy because there is none. You just do it. And so this is going to save in time and money because you won't have filing fees. As the sole owner, the sole proprietor, you are in full control. You make all the decisions. And then taxes and tax filings are relatively simple for sole proprietorships as well. Your profits and losses are reported on your personal income taxes, your personal income tax returns. It's a Schedule C to your personal returns. What are the cons or the drawbacks of a sole proprietorship? The biggest one has to do with liability. The sole proprietor is completely 100% liable and responsible for any debts, liabilities, or other obligations of the business. If the business is sued, it is you being sued and you're on the hook for any of that. It may also be more difficult to raise capital as a sole proprietor. This isn't always the case, but banks and investors are generally less inclined to loan or invest in sole proprietorships. Not always the case, but it may be more difficult to find investors or get loans or other funding as a sole proprietor. All right, that's the sole proprietorship. Let's move on to an LLC. What is an LLC? LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. It's kind of like a hybrid mix of a corporation and a partnership or a sole proprietorship. You get some of the benefits that you might get as a corporation, but some of the ease and simplicity that comes along with a sole proprietorship. One of the biggest pros and advantages of operating as an LLC is that LL part, that limited liability. The owners of the LLC, who are called the members, the LLC's members, are not personally responsible for the debts and liabilities of the LLC. If the LLC is sued, compared to the sole proprietorship, when I said the sole proprietorship is sued, that's you being sued. With an LLC, that's not the case. If the LLC is being sued, it's the LLC that's on the hook, and you as a member, your personal assets are, generally speaking, protected from those liabilities. If you're going to be operating as a single member LLC, meaning there's just one owner, one member, then same with the sole proprietorship, you as the single member are fully in control of the business. You are the decision maker. Compared to a corporation though, which also gives you that liability protection, compared to a corporation, LLCs have generally a lot more flexibility in how they are structured and how they're managed. On the tax side, LLCs are a lot like sole proprietorships as well, or partnerships, but you also get some more choices with respect to taxes. An LLC by default is taxed as a pass-through entity. The IRS kind of treats it like the LLC doesn't exist. So in that instance, the LLC is taxed almost exactly like a sole proprietorship is. You still report your profits and losses on that Schedule C on your personal taxes. But unlike a sole proprietorship, an LLC can choose to be taxed in a different way, like a corporation. An LLC can elect to be taxed as an S Corp or a C corporation. And making one of those tax elections can potentially save you a good deal on taxes. What are some of the cons or the drawbacks of the LLC? Again, obviously, I'd hope probably one of the biggest cons is going to be the cost and steps involved in setting up the LLC. You have to file a document with the Secretary of State to get the LLC registered. Usually that's going to have a filing fee associated with it. You might have some annual or ongoing filing obligations. Again, usually those are going to have some filing fees associated with them as well. There's generally just more paperwork that you have to deal with if you're forming and operating as an LLC. You're also going to have more obligations, more things you have to deal with. This is especially true now in 2024 with the recent introduction of the Corporate Transparency Act, which requires reporting companies to submit a BOI or beneficial ownership information report to FinCEN, a federal government agency. Sole proprietorships and partnerships don't have this requirement. They aren't considered reporting entities. LLCs, not all of them. There are some exclusions and exceptions, but the overwhelming majority of you who are watching this video are going to have to comply with the Corporate Transparency Act and file that BOI report. And then kind of along that same thought process, as an LLC, there are more things you have to do to benefit from that limited liability that the LLC gives you. You don't just form an LLC and then that's it, your job's done, I'm protected from all liability. You have to operate the business as a separate being, a separate and distinct thing from you if you want to benefit from it being treated as a separate and distinct thing from you. The easiest example of this is having a separate bank account for the LLC. It's still a good idea for sole proprietorships to have a separate business bank account for the sole proprietorship for, just kind of accounting purposes. But for an LLC, it's even more important because the funds of the LLC need to be separate from our individual funds as the member. So if we want to be able to benefit from and take advantage of that limited liability, that liability protection that the LLC gives us, we are going to have to follow more formalities than we will if we're operating as a sole proprietorship. So if you are trying to decide which one do I go with, should I be a sole proprietor or should I operate as an LLC, what are some things you should think about? Number one, risk involved with your business and your general risk tolerance. If your business, your industry involves substantial risk, if it is highly litigious, if people get sued a lot in your business, then an LLC is probably going to benefit you. It's going to give you some peace of mind and comfort knowing that your liability as an individual, as the member, is going to be protected from the liability and the debts of the LLC. You should also consider your own risk tolerance. Are you comfortable with accepting even a minimal amount of risk, even if you're in a relatively less risky industry? If it's pretty unlikely that someone's going to sue you, maybe you still don't even like the idea that someone could sue you. If you are super risk averse, then the LLC may still be a good idea for you. You should also consider your investment needs. If you're going to be looking for investors or trying to get a loan or raising capital, like I said, sometimes that's harder to do as a sole proprietor. An LLC, operating as an LLC, might make it easier to attract investors. If that's not the case though, if you are doing all this on your own, you don't need money from anybody else, and the risk isn't an issue for you, then sole proprietor might just be a fine choice. And finally, consider your tax preferences. Like I mentioned, kind of by default, an LLC, a single member LLC, and a sole proprietor are taxed in the exact same way. Same goes for a LLC that has multiple members and a general partnership, taxed in the same way. But the LLC has the ability to make those tax elections either as an S Corp or a C Corp and potentially save on taxes that way. So if you want to keep things just very simple, if you have no desire and don't plan on making an S or a C Corp election, you want to keep things simple, then that might be a reason to just go with a sole proprietorship. But if you're looking for ways that you can save on taxes and particularly self-employment taxes, then an LLC might be a better option. Remember that no two businesses are the same, and needs can change as the business grows. You can start off as a sole proprietor and then form an LLC later on if needed. But always consult with a lawyer and a financial or tax advisor before making any big decisions with your business. And if you're still unsure, should I do sole proprietorship, should I do LLC, of course, consult with a lawyer. That's all for this episode, folks. If you learned a thing or two, give me a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, click that little bell so you get notified anytime I post a new video, and you can check the description for links to additional information and resources. If you've decided or you're pretty sure you're gonna go the LLC route, I've got another great video that can help you with doing that. I will put it right here. You can click right there to check that out, and I'll meet you over there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.